the emergence of a female ghost from a cursed painting that holds a dark past grudge. The film opens by showing a woman named Ruja who is on the phone trying to borrow money. Ruja is a Thai woman who currently lives in New York with her daughter named Rachel, as her husband has passed away, leaving Ruja to live alone with Rachel. After her husband's death, Ruja's financial condition gradually worsens, and she is now required to find a very large amount of money to pay for Rachel's eye surgery. Rachel is diagnosed with rhegmatogenous retinal detachment, a condition caused by the retina separating due to a tear, and if it is left untreated, Rachel will most likely become blind. Not wanting her daughter to lose her sight forever, Ruja desperately tries to borrow money to fund the surgery, but unfortunately, no one is willing to help her. One day, a man named Wichai comes to meet Ruja. It turns out that Wichai is a close friend of Ruja's father, Pakorn. Wichai visits Ruja to deliver important news that her father Pakorn passed away a month ago. For an entire month, Wichai has been trying to locate Ruja, and after finally finding her whereabouts, he asks Ruja to return to her family home in Thailand. In addition, Wichai wants to discuss Pakorn's paintings, which are planned to be sold to an art collector. During his lifetime, Pakorn was a famous painter who created many impressive works. When Ruja was still a child, she lived together with Pakorn and her mother Vipa in a large house in Thailand. However, after her mother passed away, Ruja decided to move abroad because she felt uncomfortable living with Pakorn. The relationship between Ruja and Pakorn was never very close, as Pakorn was always busy with his work and never had time for her, while Vipa was the only person who truly accompanied Ruja throughout her childhood. After her mother's death several years ago, Ruja left the country and never returned to her home in Thailand. Now that both of Ruja's parents have passed away, all of their wealth, the house, and Pakorn's entire painting collection are inherited by Ruja. Since Ruja now holds the legal rights to all her parents' belongings, including Pakorn's paintings, Wichai is willing to travel all the way to New York to ask for her permission to sell 2 of Pakorn's paintings. An art collector is interested in buying the 2 paintings at an extremely high price, and before the sale takes place, Wichai asks Ruja to personally see the condition of the paintings. Most of the money from the sale will belong to Ruja, and it will certainly be enough to pay for Rachel's surgery. At first, Ruja feels hesitant about returning to Thailand, but because she desperately needs a large sum of money, she is ultimately forced to go back to Thailand, together with Rachel. During the journey, Ruja experiences a nightmare in which she meets the spirit of her mother, who warns her not to return to the house. However, the nightmare comes too late because Ruja has already arrived in Thailand. Ruja's family house is located in a remote area surrounded only by dense forest and far from any residential settlement. The house is extremely large with many rooms inside, and it also has a very spacious yard. Rachel is amazed when she sees her grandparents' huge house. Shortly after, Ruja meets the household maid named Dan. Upon arriving at the house, Wichai immediately invites Ruja to see the 2 paintings in Pakorn's painting studio. While Ruja is away, Rachel is left under Dan's supervision. At first, Rachel wants to come along to see the paintings, but Ruja does not allow her to go because children are not permitted to enter the painting studio. Ruja and Wichai then head to the studio, which is located not far from the house. Wichai shows Ruja 2 paintings titled Portrait of Beauty. Both paintings depict a beautiful woman posing with a red shawl and a snake. In the first painting, the female model is shown sitting, adorned with a snake and a red shawl, with a background filled with golden tones. In the second painting, the woman appears to be floating gracefully, her neck wrapped in a red shawl, surrounded by captivating golden hues in the background. As she looks at the paintings, Ruja feels as if they are alive, which fills her with fear.
Beauty, my leg.
Wichai then tells her the story behind the 2 paintings, explaining that the first painting was once purchased by one of Pakorn's admirers, but later returned after the owner ended his life tragically by committing suicide and killing his own family by hanging. Before his death, the owner left a final message requesting that the painting be returned to Pakorn. As for the second painting, Pakorn deliberately never sold it and kept it carefully in his house. Now that Pakorn has passed away, both paintings are desired by an art collector. Wichai explains that the paintings cannot be sold yet because both of them have slight cracks in their gold paint layers, which is why Wichai's son Tim will come to Ruja's house the next day to repair the damage. Ruja then tells Wichai that after the two paintings are sold, she wants the house to be sold as well because she has no intention of living there.
แล้วเราจะได้เงินเมื่อไหร่คะ
Elsewhere, Dan is tidying up the room while watching over Rachel. As Rachel looks around the room, she is suddenly handed a red shawl by someone.
แหวนคอคืออะไรอ่ะ
Due to her slightly blurred vision, Rachel assumes that Dan gave it to her, but it turns out it was not Dan. Dan is shocked when she sees the shawl and immediately takes it from Rachel's hands.
หนูจะไปไหน
ไปหามามี
จะเอาไปซักให้ก่อน
Later, when Rachel is alone in the room, she sees a white cloth in the neighboring room. Feeling curious, Rachel approaches it, but the cloth suddenly disappears when Ruja comes to check on her. That night, before going to sleep, Rachel asks Ruja why she is not allowed to see her grandfather's paintings. Ruja explains that all of Pakorn's paintings are frightening and not suitable for children. They then go to bed, but instead of sleeping, Ruja cries as she misses her late mother. She recalls painful childhood memories of seeing her mother being forced by Pakorn to wear revealing clothes so he could gain inspiration for his paintings. Ruja remembers her mother crying as she was forced to dress provocatively just to serve as a painting model. Rachel then comforts Ruja, who continues to cry while reliving her past. While asleep, Ruja experiences a terrifying nightmare that causes her to wake up in panic, only to realize that Rachel is no longer beside her.
มามี
Ruja immediately asks Dan for help to search for Rachel around the house.
งั้นเดี๋ยวป้าจะไปดูทั้งป่าได้
She then goes to look for Rachel in the painting studio, but instead of finding her, Ruja is disturbed by a mysterious figure inside the studio. Fortunately, Ruja manages to escape from the disturbance caused by the mysterious figure. After searching for Rachel for a long time, Ruja finally finds her with a man who turns out to be Wichai's son, Tim. Tim explains that he found Rachel wandering alone in the forest. Rachel then tells Ruja that she was actually walking through the forest with a woman wearing a red shawl. The description of this woman immediately reminds Ruja of the female figure in the paintings, causing her to feel frightened. Overwhelmed by fear, Ruja becomes angry at Rachel and accuses her of making up stories. After that, Ruja invites Tim to come to her house, as Tim is there to repair the cracks in the two paintings that are going to be sold.
ดูรูปที่อาวาสไหม
ในการซ่อมรูป
หลังบ้านคุณประกรณ์ไปแล้วจะเจอลำธารสวย
After some conversation, Ruja allows Tim to examine the paintings. While inside the studio, Tim discovers a photograph of a woman. Faintly, he hears the sound of cracking, and when he checks, he realizes the noise is coming from the two paintings. Tim remembers that the cracks were originally very small, but for some reason, within a short moment, they have become much worse. Shocked by this, Tim immediately informs Ruja, and the two of them hurry to the studio to inspect the damage.
อยากไปเล่นข้างนอก
ๆจ้า
อาทิม
ผมว่าคงต้องมาดูเองอะเชื่อผมเถอะเนี่ย
If the cracks are severe, it will take much longer to restore the paintings. Tim carefully examines the paintings and begins to gently lift part of the cracked gold paint layer. To his surprise, beneath the cracks, a hidden image of a human eye is revealed. Tim suggests that Ruja should uncover the entire hidden painting by removing all the cracked gold paint, as the discovery of a concealed painting would significantly increase its value. However, instead of agreeing, Ruja rejects Tim's suggestion and insists that he simply repair the cracks. This refusal makes Tim think that Ruja may be afraid to touch the painting due to the possibility of supernatural elements. Tim is convinced that the painting is not haunted, and to prove his point, he challenges Ruja to stare into the eyes of the woman in the painting to see whether the eyes will follow her movements. If the eyes continue to stare at Ruja wherever she moves, then the painting must indeed be haunted. Ruja begins to stare at the eyes in the painting, and suddenly the eyes start to move. Terrified by what she sees, Ruja immediately leaves the studio and returns to the house. Upon arriving, she is shocked to find Rachel holding her childhood clothes. Seeing the clothes triggers painful memories from Ruja's past that she desperately wants to forget. Angered that Dan and Rachel have touched her belongings without permission, Ruja scolds both of them and forbids them from touching her old things again. Since returning to the house, Ruja constantly feels anxious and fearful, as if she is haunted by traumatic memories from her past while living there. While in the bathroom, Ruja experiences a horrifying hallucination in which she sees a dead snake lying in the sink. Moments later, she hears Rachel screaming that there is something under her bed. At first, Ruja does not believe Rachel, but when she finally checks beneath the bed, something terrifying happens, as Ruja sees the ghostly figure of a woman beginning to torment Rachel. Ruja struggles with all her strength to save Rachel from the ghostly figure, and fortunately, she manages to rescue her before anything worse happens. Ruja immediately tries to take Rachel away from the house, but their attempt is stopped by Tim, who insists that they should not leave because a heavy rainstorm is still pouring outside. Tim promises Ruja that he will take them away once the rain subsides. To prevent Rachel from being approached by the evil spirit again, Tim gives her an anklet with small bells, explaining that it comes from a hill tribe and that the sound of the bells can ward off evil spirits, ensuring that the female ghost will no longer come near her. Several hours pass, and the heavy rain around Ruja's house finally begins to ease. Ruja then urges Tim to drive them away from the house, but instead, Tim asks her to see what he has discovered in the paintings. It turns out that Tim has recklessly peeled off part of the cracked gold paint without Ruja's permission, revealing a hidden painting of a man's face beneath the surface. Tim realizes that the man is the same person who previously bought the painting and later died by suicide. He senses that the man's death must be connected to the woman in the painting. Tim suggests once again that they should remove all the cracked gold paint to uncover the truth behind the paintings, but Ruja firmly rejects the idea and continues to demand that Tim take them away. Reluctantly, Tim drives Ruja and Rachel away in his car. But before they even leave the property, the car suddenly stalls and completely shuts down. While Tim tries to restart the car, Rachel is once again disturbed by the female spirit, causing her to panic and run away into the forest. Ruja and Tim desperately search for Rachel, who has disappeared into the woods, but thankfully, Rachel is wearing the anklet with bells, and the sound becomes their only guide. Tim focuses intently on listening to the faint ringing as they search through the forest. Unfortunately, during the search, Ruja and Tim become separated. Ruja continues wandering through the forest in search of Rachel, but she is once again harassed by the female spirit, who wraps Ruja's legs with a red shawl and drags her toward an old house hidden deep within the woods. Gathering her courage, Ruja enters the house, but instead of finding Rachel, she discovers a painting of a young child with no face. Soon after, she hears Rachel crying, and when she follows the sound, she finds that Rachel has been captured by Dan. Dan confesses that she has been terrorized by the spirit of the woman from the painting, who ordered her to kill Ruja and Rachel, threatening to kill Dan herself if she failed. Driven by fear for her own life, Dan kidnaps Rachel and attempts to murder her by pushing her into a pit. Before she can succeed, Tim arrives in time and strikes Dan, causing her to fall into the pit instead. Tim quickly rescues Rachel, and together with Ruja, they rush to the painting studio. There, Ruja becomes convinced that all the terror they have experienced is caused by the two paintings of the woman, firmly believing that the female spirit haunting them resides within those paintings. Since returning to the house, Ruja has sensed that something was terribly wrong with them. Enraged, Ruja tries to destroy the paintings, but Tim stops her. Moments later, Rachel becomes possessed by the female spirit, who declares that Ruja and her family are evil people who made her life miserable. While possessed, Rachel begins to attack Ruja, and in desperation, Ruja slaps Rachel to snap her out of the possession. At the same time, the cracks on both paintings begin to peel away on their own, revealing the hidden images beneath. The hidden image in the first painting shows 3 men sitting around a woman, while the second hidden painting depicts a woman who appears to have been strangled, her body hanging by a rope, with a child below, holding her legs as if trying to save her. Suddenly, the woman from the painting emerges and launches a violent attack on Ruja and Tim. Then Wichai arrives and witnesses the chaos unfolding in the studio. He intends to take Ruja away from the place, but suddenly Tim attacks and causes both Ruja and Wichai to lose consciousness. At that moment, a shocking truth is revealed. The Tim standing before them is not the real Tim. This man is actually Pravat, a fake Tim. The real Tim has already been murdered by Pravat, and his body is hidden inside the studio. It is then revealed that Pravat is the son of the woman depicted in the 2 paintings. The woman in the paintings is named Prang, a woman who frequently served as a model for Pakorn's artworks. Prang was Pakorn's favorite model and also his secret lover. From Pakorn and Prang's affair, a baby boy was born, and that child is Pravat. This means that Ruja and Pravat are half-siblings who share the same father but have different mothers. Prang and Pravat lived in a small house near Ruja's family home, yet Pakorn and his family treated them cruelly. Pakorn often forced Prang to pose in revealing positions, sometimes even tying her body with ropes, which caused wounds and bruises on her skin. Prang could have refused, but she did not, because she deeply loved Pakorn and desperately wanted him to love her as he once did. She obeyed all of Pakorn's demands in the hope that her love would be returned. Despite the conflict between their parents, Ruja and Pravat were close during their childhood and often played together because they both felt lonely. There were no other children Ruja's age near the house, so Pravat became her only friend. Pravat, who had a natural talent for painting, often drew Ruja's face. However, Ruja's mother, Vipa, disapproved of their friendship. One day, Vipa accused Prang and Pravat of belonging to a ghost-worshipping tribe that practiced evil acts, and she forbade Ruja from playing with Pravat anymore. Not understanding the situation, Ruja obeyed her mother and cut ties with Pravat. From that moment on, Ruja never knew what happened to Pravat and his mother. Back in the present, Pravat confesses that everything he has done is an act of revenge for the suffering his mother endured in the past. As he grew older, Pravat became determined to help his mother's spirit seek vengeance. He then forces Wichai to tell the story behind the creation of the first painting, which was made after a large party held in Pakorn's studio. After the party, Pakorn forced Prang to pose provocatively with 3 of his friends, including Wichai. Once the painting was completed, one of Pakorn's friends and admirers bought it. Upon learning the truth behind the painting and what his mother had been forced to endure, Pravat becomes consumed by rage, and he finally takes his revenge by brutally killing Wichai right in front of Ruja. After killing Wichai, Pravat approaches Ruja and forces her to remember the story behind the creation of the second painting. Ruja then begins to recall the horrifying event that happened 20 years ago, during the making of that painting. At that time, Ruja often secretly watched Pakorn painting in his studio every night, as it had become her habit to observe her father while he worked. On that particular night, Pakorn was struggling to find inspiration. In his desperation, he tied Prang's body with ropes, yet even that was not enough to inspire him. Pakorn then came up with a twisted idea and decided to hang Prang's body using a rope connected to her red shawl, causing the shawl to tighten around her neck and making it difficult for her to breathe. Witnessing this horrific scene, Pakorn finally found his inspiration and began painting Prang as she writhed in agony. Ruja could only stand there in silence, watching her father's cruel actions. Unbeknownst to her, Pravat was also witnessing the scene. Unable to bear seeing his mother treated that way, Pravat rushed into the studio and tried to help Prang by holding onto her legs, crying and begging Pakorn to stop. Instead of stopping, Pakorn became even more inspired and began painting Pravat beneath Prang's feet, capturing the moment as part of his artwork. This reveals that the child depicted in the second painting is actually Pravat, desperately trying to save his mother. When Pakorn refused to listen, Pravat begged Ruja for help as well, but Ruja remained frozen, unable to face the horrifying reality before her. Realizing Ruja was there, Pakorn angrily scolded her and ordered her to leave the studio, after which Vipa quickly took Ruja away. Several hours later, Prang died from suffocation. To erase all traces of her death, Pakorn threw Prang's body, along with Pravat, who was still alive, into a deep pit. From that moment on, Pravat was consumed by grief and rage toward Ruja's family for their cruelty toward him and his mother. Since then, Pravat and the vengeful spirit of Prang began killing those who had caused their suffering, starting with Vipa, who died by hanging, followed by Pakorn, who also met his end in the same manner. Now, Pravat believes that killing Ruja and Rachel is the final step to completing his revenge. At present, Pravat is working on a painting of a faceless child that he intends to finish. At first, he planned to paint Ruja's face, but seeing her weakened condition, he decides instead to paint Rachel's face, capturing her fear and suffering. For this reason, Pravat prepares a rope to hang Rachel. Ruja desperately apologizes to Pravat and begs him not to hurt her daughter, but Pravat shows no mercy, wanting Rachel to suffer the pain of losing the person she loves most. As Pravat reaches into his bag to retrieve his paintbrush, a venomous snake suddenly appears inside and bites his hand. Seizing the opportunity, Ruja struggles free from her restraints, and a fight breaks out between Ruja and Pravat. In the end, Ruja manages to overpower him and sets Pravat's body on fire along with both of Prang's paintings. Afterward, Ruja rescues Rachel from the burning studio, and she is overwhelmed with gratitude that both she and her daughter survived the murderous tragedy, and the story comes to an end.